Welcome to Startup Hakk. Today we're going to talk about how you can take hard problems and how you take these large hard problems and then break them down into solvable pieces. I know this is a common problem with business owners, is that sometimes you're trying to tackle a really big, large problem, and how do you break that down? So let's go ahead and start to talk about that today.
Welcome to Startup Hakk. My name is Spencer Thomason. I am the CEO and co-founder of CleanRouter, as well as many other products. Here are some lessons that I've learned building a successful business while challenging startup norms. My challenge is to push you to rethink startup success. Welcome to Startup Hakk.
Okay, so let's go ahead and chat a little bit about how we can take a large problem and break it down. I sometimes refer to this as how do you eat the elephant. Now, hopefully nobody gets after me for animal cruelty here. I'm not really necessarily talking about eating elephants. But in general, how do we take a large problem that seems almost insurmountable to solve and break it down into a small enough problems that are small enough size pieces that you can then work on these pieces. Now, I know a lot of times, especially in software development, this is a pretty common problem. So I recently started onto a new project, and on this project, it was this huge monolithic application that had had some really poor architectural decisions that had been made previously by previous engineers. Now, sometimes it seems, and when you look at the thing as a whole, you just think, wow, this is an amazing problem, that it just becomes really tough to solve. Now, one of the first things that I actually did, which is contrary to some people, and I'd be curious to hear about people's comments down below, what they think about this, but I actually threw all the process out the window. Process was actually getting in the way of actually solving the problems. And I know that's not super popular in this Scrum era where everybody thinks Scrum solves everything, but I actually threw all the process out the window. And I went to a very, very loose kanban board. And we aren't even running iterations or sprints. And I took the team and I broke it down. I then figured out who were the key players on the team to actually solving this problem. And as I started to work through some of the key players, I found there was a couple of people that honestly were nothing more than dead weight. And so making these hard decisions by actually removing some people from the project actually helped the project speed up quite a bit. And so this can be some of the other things that is a common misconception, is that throwing bodies at the problem sometimes feels like you're doing something, when in reality it actually can cause a slowdown by adding more and more bodies. So that's one of the next things that I would say, is make sure you have the right people working to try to solve the problem. Then once you have the right people working to solve the problem and you have the right process in place, then you've got to work to take the problem and break it down into chunks that you can actually try to solve. So you really have to isolate exactly what the first part is that can actually bring a real value in a quote unquote bite-sized chunk. Now, you know, that can become harder, easier said than done. And sometimes I would say you want to sit down with the key engineers and make sure that the key engineers are all bought into the best way to solve and what's the most important problems to solve first. So once you do that, then you need to scope how much that's going to take. Now, are we talking about months? If we're talking about months, then chances are you've probably not broken it down into a small enough piece yet. So that becomes an important piece to understand, is you need to make sure that it's something that you can actually turn around within a couple of weeks. Now, as we're starting to flush out what we think was going to take a couple of weeks, we're finding that in solving this problem, we're wanting to set new patterns and new processes to make sure we don't repeat mistakes of the past. And so this becomes an important piece, and you want to get to be a little cautious to make sure that you're don't get into analysis paralysis. So for instance, as we're laying this out, we're looking at the actual structure of the application and how we want to do it. You know, so we're working on a controller, service, and repository layer. And as we follow this, we're trying to make decisions on where those layers start and where those layers stop. And it's been an interesting and fun discussion, but at the end of the day, you kind of got to just make some decisions and put pen to paper, so to speak, and start writing code or start solving the problem. And so ultimately you can analysis paralysis yourself to death, and you kind of just have to ultimately just make a decision and go with it. And those decisions you may have to pay some price for later. So there's a little bit of trade-off between just getting something done versus having the perfect thing. But as I've often said, we go for better, not perfect. If you go for perfect, you'll never get it, ever. if you go for better, that's really the nature of Agile to me, is that if you're always striving to be better and you're striving to improve each piece each day, that's the spirit of Agile. And I really believe in the spirit of Agile, and I refer to it as Agile with a lowercase a versus Agile with an uppercase A. Agile with an uppercase A means something that somebody's trying to sell you something. Agile with a lowercase a means this is just the spirit of Agile, going back to the actual Agile manifesto, which unfortunately, as I've talked with people who have done Scrum and other processes, I've found that very few people actually have ever even read the Agile manifesto, and yet it's the very core of Scrum and Kanban. So that's the reason I kind of I lean more towards Kanban and in process. So in this case, as we've done that, we work to try to make sure we at least get something, and then we're starting to work on getting that something and putting it pen to paper so that we can actually see how the deliverable is. Now, I'll update you on how this project's coming, but so far we're making really good strides, and I'm really happy with the way that the project looks to be turning out. And so I can update you later on this, but these are just a few of my thoughts about how you can take a large problem, break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks, and work to try to analyze to a point, but then ultimately say, this is our decision and we're going to make a decision and go. And so hopefully some of the things I've said have been a little helpful. Make sure that you grab the Clean Router for your kids to keep your kids safe online. Clean Phone is also a fantastic option for your kids while they're on the go. So make sure that you're grabbing your Clean Phone to keep your kids safe on the go, and so you can manage their internet access. Thanks, and have a good one.